great to start, but you have to start to be great. So, good morning to one and all gathered here. On behalf of management of KPR Institute of Engineering and Technology, on behalf of CSR, Principal Ma'am, Department of EEE, Head of the Department, organizing team, and my own behalf, I welcome our today's chief guest, Dr. P. Raghupati sir, CSIR, for to handle the today's session. So, welcome you, sir. I am very much delightful to introduce our today's chief guest. Sir did his bachelor's degree and master's degree and MPhil at St. Joseph College, Tiruchi, and he received his Doctor of Philosophy in IIC Bangalore in the year 2009. His current research includes halo nanostructure material for the application in lithium-ion batteries, redoxed flow batteries, and supercapacitors. He has visited many countries for his enrichment. He did his postdoctoral fellowship in the Texas Material Institute, the University of Texas of Austin, USA in the year 2009 to 2010. He has honored as a senior research fellow IIC Bangalore in the year 2006 to 9 and research fellowship in the Embassy of France in the year 2007. He has received the project funding from Department of Science and Technology for the development of lithium-ion supercapacitor as smart and clean energy storage devices. He has handled many technical sessions related to battery technology, nanostructured materials and the composites, supercapacitors and redoxed batteries. So we are very much happy and delightful to welcome you, sir. So in this grateful occasion, on behalf of organizing team, I request our today's resource person to take over the session. Sir, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. So, good morning to everyone. It's my great pleasure to be part of this, Atal program. And also, I'm really thankful to the organizers, and especially Kumar Chinnayan and Uthir Swami, for being as instrumental in coordinating this wonderful event. I also extend my gratitude to the Professor Vairam, who has referred, because we have been associated in many occasions. So with this, I'm happy to be sharing our research activities, what we have been doing for last few decades. So the event, so what you have been listening for a few days, it's energy technology, especially energy storage and management, and the challenges. So in today's talk also, we will be highlighting the importance of electrochemical energy storage technology in the view of energy demand. So what we are going to face in future. As title says, electrochemical energy system, it's a long way to go, but we need to understand the challenges. What are the challenges in this storage system? And then we will come to know what are the opportunities then one can think of this electrochemical energy storage system. So as you can see here, it's a lithium-ion battery, supercapacitor, and flow batteries, as mentioned in the introduction session. So let me begin my presentation by introducing the top 10 problems. So what we are facing, the top 10 problems is, starting from water, food, and environment, poverty, terrorism, war. And recently we have been suffering a lot from this disease, COVID-19, and of course democracy, the population. These are the top 10 problems that human being we are facing. If you look at on the top, the energy is placed in the number 1, meaning that if you can address, if you can solve this energy problem, so the all other remaining problems will be taken care. So that's why energy is placed in the top priority. Look at these pictures. So although we have been living in a well-civilized status, still we are having unelectrified villages in our country. So there is even Dindikal district, there is no electricity supply, and here also you can see still people are without any EB power supply. And also look at this CO2 content in the atmosphere. So if you look at carefully, the CO2 content in the atmosphere keeps on increasing. For example, look at these 150 years back, the ppm CO2 content in the atmosphere in terms of ppm, it's like, 290, below 300. And even up to 1930, the amount of CO2 content is, there is no much increase. But after 1930 or 1940, you could see that there is a steep increase in the CO2 content. So a day before, I have checked the CO2 content in the atmosphere from this daily CO2 content website. So it was found that the amount of CO2 content is 416.3 ppm. So almost more than 2 ppm increased within a year. So exactly February 24, 2020, it was like, 414. So 2 ppm increases. So this clearly tells us that there is a consequence of these CO2 content, causes of global warming and other issues. So this is just picture capture at Delhi during the winter season. You can see, you can look at the smoke, how the air is being polluted. So a lot of air, the particles accumulated in the atmosphere. Again, the another heartbreaking picture, what you see here. You might have heard last year Amazon, fire accident, the forest fire. So these are clearly indicating that there is a certain change in the global scenario. So what are the causes? Why these things are happening? So let us try to understand one by one. Look at this again. So what do you see here? Here is the well-populated cities like Kolkata, Bangalore, even Chennai and all. Look at this traffic. And essentially what happens when you have a lot of vehicles, since we are using a fossil fuel, obviously there will be a lot of smoke that is contained harmful oxides in terms of nitrous oxide or carbon monoxide and so on. So these things again polluting the air to a large extent. Okay, so for that we need to find an alternative energy system. So that's where now we have been talking about electric vehicles. Okay, so battery powered vehicles. So let's try to understand what are the challenges we are having in the battery power vehicles. Okay, so this is overall global energy outlook. Look at this graph. It clearly shows the amount of energy that we have been consuming during 2020, almost 20 terawatt. For your information, I am giving 1 terawatt is equal to 10 power 12 watt. Then imagine after 30 to 40 years, what would happen? So the amount of energy that we would be consuming, right? We would be consuming almost 50 to 60 terawatt of the energy. But the question comes whether we will be having enough fossil fuels to meet our energy demand. So basically, we all know that energy is a central societal problem which really impacts on our human life, economy, environment, health, and of course, national security. So what this energy projection tells us? So the energy is, greater challenges that we are facing. And of course, the projection says that the amount of energy that we are going to consume after 30 years would be doubled or even tripled. So in that, there is a quote from the Nobel laureate that is the amount of, we will be having trillions of money after a few hundred years, but we are not sure whether we will be having enough fossil fuels or not. There is an issue in my slide, it's not moving. Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it's not moving. Give me a minute. Yes. Okay. So this is what I was telling. After 200 years, we will be having trillions and trillions of money, but we won't left out any natural resources. So what are the alternative arrangements to meet this energy demand? Look at this again, the same scenario. In the past, even look at before 2000, these fossil fuel cells, oil, natural gas, coal, all these things dominated in the past. The same trend is being expected even now and also future, because we won't be having a other alternative system which can really replace these fossil fuel cells. And look at these, the energy overview. What are the other systems we have? Look at the other system: geothermal, solar, wind, biomass, and hydroelectric. So these are the energy sources in which we can produce energy. So electrochemical energy storage conversion technology. Look at this carefully. Alternative energy we need to have. What are the alternative energy systems one can think of? Solar, wind, nuclear, hydro, and geothermal. The last three, fuel cell, supercapacitor, and batteries, are collectively called electrochemical energy storage and conversion system. Please remember that the capacitor and batteries are energy storage system. Fuel cell is called energy conversion system. Okay. So if you look at these electrochemical energy storage system, further classified into three categories: battery, fuel cell, and capacitors. The combination of these two would be termed as a flow battery. So we will discuss when we talk about the redox flow batteries. So I must tell you the fact that, see, these renewable energy, solar and wind, these are called renewable energies. The problem associated with these renewable energies are seasonable. Okay, so we will not get energy all the time. Suppose, for example, you want some energy, we cannot instruct the sun to shine for some time. In similar way, for having energy, we cannot request wind. Hey, wind, I need some energy. Can you blow? It won't do that. So the idea is, whenever they do their job, we must be in a position to store those energies. So those renewable energies should be stored in a proper manner. So that's why these electrochemical energy systems are becoming more and more important. Okay, so as a consequence of all these development of electrochemical energy and storage technology, what are the challenges we have? We have limited energy and power density, high cost, and safety durability. So these are the challenges we will be having in the case of electrochemical energy storage and conversion technology. So when we talk about the challenges in terms of energy and power, you must know what is energy and what is power. Look at this. This is just a chain to understand what is really electricity is a kind of chain. Looking at this, we need to produce electricity, that is generation. And this electricity should be transmitted from one place to the other place where we have grid. And then these energies should be stored in a storage device. So that's where we are emphasizing on the storage technology. Okay, now let's try to understand what is the actual process happening in that. Okay, let's see what is oxidation and reduction. So these are the very, very fundamental, the concept in electrochemical energy systems. Not only energy system, any electrochemical system you talk, sensor, plating, or any application we come across in the topic of electrochemistry. So this would be the very fundamental concept. Oxidation and reduction, normally we call it as a redox reaction. Historically, oxidation is the reaction with oxygen, we know that, and reduction is the removal of oxygen. But in the modern technology, one should understand what is the actual oxidation, loss of electron and gain of electrons. Probably we would have all learned during our school days, but sometimes some point of the time we may get confused what is oxidation and reduction. So now here is a mnemonic device to remember what is oxidation and reduction. Look at this picture, the Leo. Leo means we know that. Leo says Gar. The Leo's, it gives a sound, Gar, right? Leo. Loss of electron oxidation, gain of electron is reduction. You will never forget. And the other scenario also you can think of oil rig. So oxidation is, loss of electron, reduction is gain of electron. So this is the way we learn the concept, so that we will not forget. Okay, so look at this very, very important and very interesting, very impressive picture that tells you how the revolution has happened in this energy storage technology. Look at these four images. For example, look at the top left, that is a Belgium car powered by lead acid battery. The speed of that 100 meters per second. the same, lithium ion powered Tesla car. Look at this, the modern technology, how the revolution happened. Similarly, look at these mobile phones. Those days, these mobile phones used in the military applications. Look at this lead acid battery mobile phones. The weight of these mobile phones, were like, in terms of kgs, 2 to 3 kgs. Now look at these smartphones. What we have now, the weight of the smartphone is 100 to 200 grams hardly. Multiple of applications inbuilt within that. And these are the things happen due to the advancement happen in the energy storage technology, especially the battery, rechargeable batteries, that is called lithium ion batteries. So you will see how these lithium ion batteries have, made a life so easy and fascinating. Look at this lithium ion technology in the portable market. Look at this picture during 90s. What do you observe between these two pictures? 20-30 years back, the people were enjoying the event, the live event as such. But after the technology development, so once these smartphones are being floating in our hand, you can look at this. People are crazy to capture the event rather than watching the live. But I'm sure almost more than 90% of us, we won't be looking back at those images. So forget about that. But the idea is here how these technology has made a revolution in the case of energy storage and conversion technology. Look at these all happen due to the development of lithium ion batteries. What you see here, different types of batteries. Probably you'd have seen these batteries placed in our mobile phones. So of course, these are in the laptops or other portable devices. Okay, now let's see. As I mentioned, what are the challenges we have? We have a lot of challenges in the case of energy and power. So you must understand, irrespective of your discipline, this is very fundamental and very important when you want to learn the other concept, energy. So you need to be very familiar with the energy and power and cycle life and the storage system, conversion system, all kinds of things. So this particular slide will tell you the relation between the energy density and power density. This is so-called Ragon plot, correlating energy and power. So I must tell you the energy density is the amount of energy stored per unit volume or weight. That is called energy density. So that means how much energy you can store per unit of volume or per unit of weight. On the other hand, power density. Power density is nothing but how fast you can make use of that energy. That is called power density. Maybe at the end of this session, you would be able to tell us what is energy density and power density. So look at this Ragon plot, clearly shows that there are few devices called batteries and fuel cells. By looking at this graph, you must be able to tell us that these batteries and fuel cells are high energy density devices. On the other hand, supercapacitor, capacitor, these are high power density devices. Okay, so by simple definition, you can also imagine other, the concept. Look at these two containers. This is a scenario where you could store a lot of energy in the container. This is energy density. As I mentioned, power density is nothing but how fast you can make use of that power. That is called power density. Look at these two containers. In the left one, you could see the wider neck so that you can quickly transfer the amount of energy that's stored in that. On the other hand, you need to store a large amount of energy for a given volume or weight. So that is called energy density. You can also think of 100-meter running race along with the marathon. What do you do for 100-meter? You have to put a lot of effort, quick power, that is power density. For a marathon race, gradually you will consume the energy because you need to have an entire range of coverage. Okay, that is called energy. So these are things will help us to remember what is energy density and power density. Again, look at this. This is amazing. I'm really, excited while reading these kind of sources. So we were talking about the modern technology, but we should not leave the concept how the battery technology has evolved. Look at this called Agastya battery, 7,000 years ago. So these batteries were known. So the Sanskrit version was given here, but I'm not going to read that one. Only I want to tell you that this is the message. A clean copper plate is put in an earthenware vessel. It is covered first by a copper sulfate and then moisture, sand, sawdust. After that, put a mercury amalgamated zinc sheet on the top of energy known by twin name of Mitra and Varuna. We know what is Mitra, what is Varuna, right? Water will be split into, two gases, Pranavayu and Udanavayu, right? We all know what is Pranavayu, what is Udanavayu, oxygen and hydrogen. The chain of 100 jars, that is Sadakuba. Sada means 100, we know that. So look at these things, Mitra, cathode, Varuna, anode. Pranavayu is oxygen and Udanavayu is hydrogen. By combining a simple water splitting reaction, that produces, a lot of electricity. And similar way, 2000 years back, look at these batteries, that is Baghdad batteries, where you can see here the copper iron based material, copper cylinder cathode, iron rod. So these rods are immersed into the copper cylinder where copper would act as a cathode. So just vinegar was used as a electrolyte. Okay, so that produces a lot of electricity. So this is the way how the ancient days batteries were known, but really those days we were not aware these are the really batteries. The actual battery history has started like this. There was a gentleman called Luigi Galvani. Probably we might have heard about Galvani. Galvani was the first guy who introduced the animal electricity. Basically Galvani was a surgeon. So when he was trying to do some operation, he wants to produce electricity. For that, he has taken two different metal and he touched in the dead frog. That story we know. His wife, Lucia Calisa, she was also working with him to assist him. So what happened? He assumed that the electricity produced between the legs of the frog, but the concept, the Volta has said that no, that was not due to the frag, it's due to the two different metals. So that's where the story has started. Galvani to Volta, and then later Daniel. So the model Daniel cell we would have studied. Then later lead acid battery. Now lithium ion battery, lithium sulfur, lithium air, and a lot of sodium ion battery, organic battery, and so on. I'll try to cover the all concept of batteries probably at the end of our session. I hope this would give you the history and the known scenario of battery technology. Now let's go to the modern battery technology, what we have been talking, that is lithium ion batteries. Why lithium ion batteries are so fascinating? So by understanding the energy density, now look at this graph where you can see the battery system versus energy density. Look at the energy density for lithium ion, it's almost more than 150 watt hour per kg. I will tell you how to calculate energy density in a minute. Before that, look at this energy density for lead acid battery, nickel cadmium, and nickel metal hydride. So what happens if you look at carefully, the energy density of lead acid battery is almost 3 times lesser than your lithium ion batteries. So what does it mean? So this one lithium ion batteries can replace 3 lead acid battery or 3 nickel cadmium batteries. So that's where the energy density and these lithium ion batteries become so fascinating and very important in terms of the energy density. Okay, the question comes, why energy density is much superior for these lithium ion batteries over the other systems, lead acid and nickel cadmium? Look at this very simple equation for energy density. Look at this current and voltage. We all know that current and voltage is nothing but your watt, right? And then we need to have the time factor. So that is watt hour divided by weight. So this would give you watt hour per kg. That is the unit of energy density. Okay, so now why for lithium? Look at this. We all know that from the periodic table itself, how where is this lithium placed and what is that redox potential? It is minus 3.05 volt. And volt, if you look at in this simple equation, it's in the upper side. So what happens when you have higher voltage? Eventually, this energy density will be much higher. More than that, look at this weight. We all know that being lithium is a very soft and lightweight metal. Again, the energy density would be enhanced by the weight factor. So these are the things made lithium-ion batteries are so fascinating with the energy density. But the question comes here, okay, well, you would be having like 200 watt hour per kg. Whether this energy density is sufficient for our applications? No. So that's where the opportunities comes. You need to enhance the energy density to a large extent, like 3,000, 4,000. then only we can operate our electric vehicle and bulk storage of electricity. So how to do that? Before that, this is to give you a feeling how these electrochemical energy systems are working. This is the working principle of lithium-ion batteries. You can see that lithium-ion battery consists three important parts, that is cathode, anode, and membrane in between, separating anode and cathode. So I must also tell you and also hint to you that knowingly or unknowingly, every one of us will be carrying these lithium ions in our pocket. So that's where that is a Li plus. Okay, so in our mobile phone, all these compounds are being settled. While talking, you may not realize these lithium ions are, settling from one compartment to the other compartment. What happened? So doing so, you could get the energy. So that's where we are making use of this energy. Okay, so this is simple, the charge discharge profile of the lithium ion batteries. So the bottom one, you see, this is discharging. So that means you are using. The other one is charging. So we are charging, right? So this concept comes from mainly from the fundamental relation between the thermodynamics and electrochemistry. We all know that there is a factor called delta G, right? A free energy change is related to your E, that is voltage, from electrochemistry. We know that delta G is equal to minus energy, so that reaction is spontaneous. Don't worry about the simple electrochemical reactions. So these all will be understood the people who are working in this field. So only what you need to understand, why these batteries are so fashioned and how the energy density are much higher compared to other batteries. So that's sufficient. Let us try to understand how the story has started. By looking at different metals, like molybdenum disulfide as a cathode and lithium as an anode. So there was a guy called Rudy Herring from British Columbia, University of British Columbia during 1979. He was the first guy who has taken this metal sulfide and coupled with metallic lithium. And he could succeed in delivering the potential like 2.2 volt. So during charge discharge cycling, he found that there was a dendrite growth at the surface of your metallic lithium. Okay, so what is dendrite? Dendrite is a growth of a needle, like kind of film. Like look at this. This is called the dendrite growth. What happens? This is a smooth surface. There is no charge discharge cycles, no operation of the battery. When you start operating the battery, it's slowly producing a needle kind of thing, giving kind of a short circuit to the cathode compartment. So that's where they could not have a viable lithium system. So what happens? So that is the reason he could not completely make use of this metallic lithium. Okay, so that is the turning point happened with these gentlemen. Look at these people, were awarded as Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2019 for their accomplishment in the rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. Akira and John Goodenough and Professor John Whittingham. So these three gentlemen, they have made a great contribution in the field of materials electrochemistry, especially for rechargeable systems. Look at this. I'm not going through the detail of this, but only thing you need to understand, the first guy used metal sulfide. So the moment when they use metal sulfide, look at this energy, and the energy gap is very less. So when you have oxide, you have a wider potential. Look at this potential gap. So the idea is, instead of metal sulfide, use metal oxide. You can expand the potential window. Thereby, you can expand the energy density. So that was the idea. So slowly they moved to metal sulfide to metal oxide. So this is the turning point in this technology where they could achieve even 4.5 volt. Look at this titanium disulfide and replaced with lithium cobalt oxide is the well-known cathode material. Almost 90% of our mobile phones contain these three materials: lithium, nickel, lithium manganese oxide, and spinel. Okay. Yeah, so due to this dendrite growth, they could not replace. Again, the opportunity is that you need to replace the metallic lithium with the same element, but without forming a dendrite growth. So they want to reduce completely the metallic lithium. At the same time, they want to retain the performance of this metallic lithium. So that's where these lithium ion batteries came into the picture. So now you should understand what is lithium battery, lithium ion battery. In lithium battery, there is no ions, so just metallic lithium as such used. And lithium ion battery, instead of metallic lithium, people have started using lithiated metal. That is, Li plus is being stored in the carbon material, lithiated carbon. So this electrode will not produce any dendrite growth. So that is second generation of your lithium technology. That is called lithium ion batteries, right? Okay, so what are the components? As I mentioned a couple of slides back. So lithium ion battery contains cathode. So cathode broadly classified into three categories: layer, spinel, and olivine. Okay, so these all the crystal structures. Don't worry about that. Only you need to understand what is cathode, what is anode. Anode is basically a carbon material, graphite, and some metals and alloys. Look at this separator. Basically, it's a polypropylene membrane. Solvent, we need to have an electrolyte, and the salt is lithium-based salt. Okay, so we are not going to discuss in detail about this compound, but only thing I just give you important factor that you need to consider when you want to construct a battery. So this is, the potential versus lithium and lithium plus. So your lithium is this side and your metal oxide this side. So that would give you a wider potential gap. Look at these positive and negative material. So the extreme ends of these materials, when you combine these two, you will get the wider potential window, thereby you will get enhanced energy density. For example, look at this manganese oxide. So this manganese oxide could be act as a anode in the bottom side, and this compound could act as a cathode. So when you combine these two, this will be cathode, this will be anode. But remember, this manganese oxide would act as a cathode when you combine this oxide with the below material, carbon or graphite. So you have to marry a couple where two different extreme potential, so that you will get enhanced potential, open circuit potential, right? Okay. So this is small scale, the development, materials development. The first material is lithium cobalt oxide. So this material was discovered by Professor John Goodenough. So after his invention, that Sony had started commercializing this material. But there were issues with this cobalt, because cobalt is toxic and expensive. Then alternative materials are being sought, like spinel, because manganese is there, much cheaper. And more than that, iron, other compound, lithium iron phosphate. This is also cheaper material. But problem, that all material have its own advantage and disadvantage. Okay. Look at this one spinel. It's though manganese is much cheaper and they have a proper crystal structure for a feasible, easy lithium ion extraction and insertion. But problem with that, there is a manganese dissolution. That means active material dissolution in the electrolyte. There is a John Teller phenomena is there, loss of crystallinity, and then there is a development of microstrain due to the lattice parameter. So these are the failures. So at CSIR SICRI, we would like to highlight one of the factor, that is manganese dissolution, considered as a major factor causing a failure of this battery. So we have addressed how to prevent this manganese dissolution. So only one part from that, don't worry about this graph, what you see, capacity, cycle life. But the only thing, look at these two different cartoons. The left hand, you could see that 53% of manganese 3 plus. That means you could see the large amount of manganese dissolved in the electrolyte. The moment same material, when you have 29% of manganese 3 plus, you could see that it is only minimum amount of manganese dissolution is there. So that thereby we could control the manganese dissolution by tuning the manganese valence, that is 3 plus. Okay. So this is the overall comparison of this lithium cobalt oxide, spinel, lithium iron, and carbon. As I mentioned a couple of slides back, you could see that the advantage of this cobalt oxide, it is okay, fine, 560 watt-hour per kg energy density, higher than this spinel, but problem with toxic and safety issues. So the alternative is slightly lesser energy density as well as the capacity, but problem here, the advantage is inexpensive, cheaper. On the other hand, lithium iron phosphate is much cheaper than these two elements. And the problem with this is a poor conductivity. So you need to improve the conductivity. So that's where electronic conductivity plays an important role. For that, you need to do some modification of the active material. Okay, so these are the combination. Of course, you have anode, that is lithiated carbon in the place of metallic lithium. Okay, again the price, we know that iron is much cheaper and compared to cobalt. So all these factors one must understood before making any the materials choice. Okay, so this is the overall battery landscape. What we have been talking from 90, that is Sony lithium cobalt oxide, and the energy density in the range of 250 watt-hour per kg. But this energy density is not sufficient. That's why people keep on working in their different materials or different systems. So now we have been talking about the organic based batteries, lithium sulfur, lithium air, and of course sodium ion batteries, because the amount of lithium ions globally is not that enough. And that's why people are started looking for the alternative system, because lithium sodium are placed in the same periodic in the periodic table, and the property also almost same by leaving one electron each. Only thing, the sodium is slightly different from lithium in terms of the reactivity and other systems. Okay, so again the projection, as we have seen in the very beginning, a twofold increase energy density over 30 years, right? That could be possible only lithium sulfur and lithium air. But I will show you in a minute what are the challenges of lithium sulfur and lithium air. So these are all the lab scale level, but once the technology is ready, it will take 2 to 3 decades, right, to come into the market. Okay, so how safe this battery technology? You might have heard or you might have seen somewhere. So some kind of, the accident happened with the lithium ion batteries. Of course, that's a highly reactive compound. We know that. So these are again the, the challenges. So we need to be careful while choosing that. Why does it happen? That's due to the various factors, like, the cell assembling and the, the oxygen evolution happened from your active material and so on. So how to do that? So we need to eliminate the oxygen based compound. So oxygen releasing cathode is lithium cobalt oxide. This oxygen is being evolved. So that's why you could see a bulged lithium ion cell. So you replace with a very stable and safe cathode material, right? And also try to avoid the flammable liquid organic electrolytes. So this is more challenges, because aqueous electrolyte cannot provide you that much potential, 3 to 4 volt, because the thermodynamic potential of water is 1.2. So these are the challenges. Suppose you come with the electrolyte which is not flammable, so then you can replace completely these electrolytes. These are flammable in nature. Okay, so this is just fun. Somebody says some folk predict that the future mode of transport would be either an electric vehicle or a horse. So this scenario at right time, by considering the price of the fuel, petrol and diesel, this would look like a reality. Okay, so what is the alternative system? As I mentioned, lithium air and lithium sulfur. Don't worry about the reaction mechanism of all these compounds, but only think lithium air and lithium sulfur almost same system. Only the difference is lithium air, you are using air as a cathode material. In the case of lithium sulfur, you will be using sulfur as a cathode. Look at these two cartoons. So the right hand side is the conventional battery system, where the space is a big issue, right? Because you need to have more energy. For that you are storing more batteries. Okay, so this is a challenge. But in this case, so you are going to use air as one of the active material, right? So this air could be accessed directly from the environment. So you don't have to have a separate space for this air. So that's why this lithium air, is being attractive, especially in the case of large scale of energy density. And the energy density also much higher. Look at this energy density scale. This is lithium air. Look at this 5,000 watt-hour per kg. Now you can imagine how many times higher than that of your conventional batteries. Of course, lithium sulfur also, above 3,500 watt-hour per kg. So the more importantly, the point that we have to note is that the cost Look at the cobalt. What we have been conventionally using active material cobalt is 42,000 US dollar per ton. The same quantity of the sulfur is just 30 US dollar. But atmosphere, oxygen. So I don't think that we need to pay for oxygen, but we may wonder, yes, they may come for a cost. We need to pay for a pure oxygen. Okay, so these are the scenario. Now look at these two systems by considering the energy density. Look at these two systems. So this is lithium sulfur and this is lithium air. Okay, so the reaction, as I mentioned here, lithium is common in both the system. So the anode, both the system is same lithium. Now you may ask that in this case also we are using metallic lithium. So again, the dendrite growth will be there. Yes, certainly. That's where the challenges comes here. This is again, now we are going back to the initial stage of our lithium technology, right? But that gives enormous energy density. So we need to address these challenges. Okay, so the atmospheric reaction also much faster in the case of lithium, and lithium dendrite reactivity, all these compounds, associated each other by giving a big, disadvantage of this metallic lithium. But we have to take this as a challenge. Look at this lithium sulfur. Although you have seen that the energy density for lithium sulfur is much higher. Yes, fine. But what is the issue? Issue with lithium sulfur is the solubility of polysulfide. The solubility of polysulfide. When I say polysulfide, it's nothing but the active material. So once the active material is dissolved in the electrolyte, then actually the activity of the battery has been lost. Similarly, the low electronic conductivity, as we have seen lithium iron phosphate, poor electronic conductivity, you have seen in the table. Similarly, this sulfur also is known for low electronic conductivity. So that means the energy density much higher, but there is also problem. So that's why these lithium sulfur and lithium air has enough challenges to address. Okay, so how we have addressed this lithium polysulfide solubility? So we have used kind of a new design and architecture of this active electrode by combining glass fiber based electrodes. So what do you see here in this picture? By having a new design that the electrode design would really prevent the solubility of the polysulfide, what you are seeing here. Polysulfide is nothing but your active material. And look at these two pictures. This is the polysulfide. This is after cycling. You could see that this color has been completely changed. So there is no dissolution of this active material in the electrolyte. So that has been retained within the active material itself. This is again the same scenario and the different combination of this electrode structure. Here we used this polysulfide combined with a kind of additive and the manganese dioxide, right? So you can see here there is a stability. The extended stability would have been noted here. Look at this. This is the capacity retention. Retention means to what extent you can retain your original capacity. Look at this, is no additive, nothing, just sulfur itself. That is 31%. But you need to add, Ketzen black. It's a kind of conducting carbon, and this is manganese oxide. And the combination of this oxide and the conductive carbon, you could see that almost 91% we could retain the capacity. So that's our achievement to enhance the cyclability. Look at this cyclability. That is the issue. Here 2C, 1C is nothing but the rate of charge. How fast you can recharge your mobile, right? How fast you can recharge your laptop. So that's where we need. So you must be able to recharge your mobile phones while searching a bike key or car key. Okay, within the fraction of a second, you must be able to charge it, your mobile phone. So that's where these active materials plays a very, very important role in charging your battery and charging your battery for many applications. So that's where the active materials is very, very important, right? Okay, look at this lithium air. Already we have mentioned that there is the challenges of lithium air. What are the other challenges? Look at this graph. The black one is the actual lithium air. There is no catalyst. Look at this discharge, charging and discharging. So output and input should be same. So then only you will get 100% efficiency. But look at these two, the charging voltage input and output is a huge difference. There will be 1.7 volt difference. So that means your efficiency is very, very less. So then people have thought how to bring down this voltage difference, the over potential. By using platinum and gold, they could bring the potential difference between to a large extent. That is, below 4 volt, and this is above 3 volt. So thereby you can see the reduction. Fine. The laboratory level, they are happy to use platinum and gold. But how do you take it? So they are happy. But how do you take it in the market? When you want to take it to the market or electric battery and all, you can't even think of these two metals, noble metal, platinum and gold. It's much expensive. So that means there is optimum kind of things you need to have. So in the same performance, suppose you replace the platinum and gold with kind of a carbon or cheaper material, then we are in the business. So such kind of direction we need to take up. So that is where our research is being focused. That is very important too. Okay. So the last part, redox flow battery. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, fuel cell and battery. Combination of these two technology refers as a flow batteries. But you could see that. What happens in flow battery? We are essentially circulating the electrolyte into the cell stack, like what you see here in this case. So electrolytes are being stored in the reservoir or tank. So these electrolytes are being pumped into the cell stack, where cell stacks is placed here. The actual electrochemical reactions are taking place at the interface of electrode and electrolyte here. So what is the advantage of this redox flow battery? Because many of us are not familiar with this redox flow battery, because we know that battery because we have been using our batteries like anything. But redox flow battery kind of rechargeable again storage battery. What is the advantage of this redox flow battery? The independent operation of power and energy. Now we are very, very well known that energy density and power density. In this battery, it's possible to operate energy and power in two different manner. Look at this. This is a model where you can see you can increase the energy power as well as you can increase the energy. How do we do that? In one case, you may need to have high capacity, increase the volume of your electrolyte or concentration of your electrolyte. For some application, you need to increase the power. We have already defined what is power, right? Quick use of energy. So you need to use the maximum number of electrodes. So that is your power. In addition to this, of course, you have other advantage, high efficiency, long life, depth of discharge is 100%. Of course, this is environmentally friendly because you are using a mild electrolyte. The operation also is very convenient. So that is the reason these redox flow batteries are considered as a viable technology for storing solar and wind. Okay, for storing a large scale electricity. So these redox flow battery really technology as far as energy and power concerned. So this is the working principle of these flow battery. As I mentioned, these electrolytes are being pumped into the cell stack. So this is a small prototype model what we have been using in our lab. This doesn't contain electrolyte, but this is an anolyte and catholyte. These electrolytes are being pumped into the cell stack. We are not shown here pump. There should be a miniature pump here. Through this pump, the electrolytes going there, and again from there it is going. So coming back here. Okay, so again the lithium battery here also you have the history how flow battery has started. 70s, the modern flow battery was launched by NASA with this iron and chromium system. The Learn France ran a flight where this chlorine was generated on board. That happens between the reaction of chromium oxide and HCl. So chlorine was produced. And again, the story, if you look at, it's a plenty starting from zinc bromine. And even now zinc bromine is considered as a potential candidate in the flow battery system. And then later there are different, metal, iron, chromium, vanadium redox flow battery, and lithium alkaline cathode flow battery. There are a lot of, now people are trying to combine lithium technology and flow battery. So that means what, you want to retain the energy available from your lithium technology, and you want to make use of the independent operation of power and energy with the help of flow battery. And you could see that now we are 2020 and working on different kinds of redox flow battery, that is organic battery and the zinc polyiodide, all polymer kinds of battery. You know? So just I will give you one or two examples. What we have been doing at CSRC3 is zinc bromine redox flow battery. The reason for that, we have plenty of bromine in the sea source. And of course, we know that zinc is one of the most abundant metal in the earth crust. That's the reason. This is zinc bromine redox flow battery, what you could see here. One compartment is your zinc, the other compartment is your bromine. Okay, so that's why this is called a zinc bromine redox flow battery. Okay, so what are the challenges? We have talked about lithium, lithium ion, lithium sulfur, lithium air, and all these things. We have also seen the, the challenges. So what are the challenges in the case of zinc bromine redox flow battery? So here the zinc dendrite is a common issue, like what you see here in your metallic lithium. The same phenomena has happened in the lithium zinc also. The other one, what is the electrocatalyst? Another issue with the electrocatalyst of zinc bromine. Bromine redox couple is sluggish. So that means the kinetics of this bromine bromine redox couple must be balanced with the redox reaction of the zinc. Okay, so that's the idea. So one of my PhD students has tried to address the kinetics of bromine bromine redox couple. Look at this. This is nothing but a cyclic voltamgram. Don't worry about that. Only thing, look at this black one. There is no catalyst, and he used carbon nanotube as a catalyst. Of course, remember that that's also expensive, but to understand the proof of concept, how these catalysts are being used to enhance the efficiency. Look at this, the black one, there is no catalyst, almost 700 millivolt difference. But the moment you modify the electrode with the carbon nanotube, that is multi-wall, single wall, you could see there is a enhancement in the efficiency. So that means the voltage reduction is nothing but enhancement in the voltaic efficiency, right? Yes, so this is the way how we modified the electrodes to enhance the voltaic efficiency. Thereby, you can enhance the energy efficiency. These are the graphs showing that enhanced performance. 100 cycle, there is almost 95% efficiency, the capacity retention. Okay, and again the new system. See the vanadium and zinc. If you think about zinc bromine alone, it's a good system, and vanadium alone, it's a okay ideal system. But again, the problem with zinc, when you couple with bromine, we all know that bromine is hazardous, right? So we have to eliminate the bromine compound. In similar way, vanadium also is it works in the acidic condition. So that means that component also replaced. So we thought that, so one of the component of zinc bromine taken zinc, and all vanadium also we have taken one compartment. So we coupled these two and ended up with a new system called zinc and vanadium, where we have not lost any performance of zinc bromine as well as performance of vanadium. But we have essentially replaced the bromine from the bromine zinc bromine battery, and we replaced the other component of vanadium. Thereby, we could get a new system called zinc and vanadium with enhanced performance. So this is our progress. So now after addressing these things, so we have started in a small scale like 3 watt, 5 watt, 10 watt. Now we are capable of making, in terms of kilowatt of zinc bromine redox flow battery. And of course, the all vanadium also we are working. So that means we are essentially have two important systems, that is zinc bromine and as well as all vanadium redox flow batteries. Okay, this is the commercial product. Once after assembling the cell stack and other things, that looks like this. So these are the containers. So it can be easily transported from one place to the other place. This is called in terms of kilowatt hour, 400 kilowatt hour stationary of flow battery. This is pack. And this is, megawatt plant. Imagine this. Just imagine if you can store your electrolytes almost, half of your football ground. So then you imagine how much electrolytes you can store, and expecting a large amount of energy could be, that is why megawatt hour plant could be realized. So the technology would look like this. So this is cell stack, and this is the electrolyte, right? Almost we are at the end. This is super capacitor. So capacitor, super capacitor, ultra capacitor, all these terminology is same, indicating energy storage device. Okay, so in a physics, you know that parallel two plate separator at a distance, right, d, then you could realize there is a capacitance. So this capacitance is calculated being taking a charge by or voltage. Okay, so electrochemical capacitor is nothing but energy storage device. So that could be realized in two different ways. One is the double layer capacitors. So where this charge is being stored in between the electrode and the electrolyte. You imagine that you are dipping a electrode inside the electrolyte. So there you can realize there is an interface between your surface of the electrode and the electrolyte. So that interface is responsible for your energy storage. And the other case, pseudocapacitor. Pseudocapacitor is a kind of electron transfer process, like what you have seen in your battery. The complete one electron transfer. The electron transfer from electrode to electrolyte and electrolyte to electrode. So that is electron transfer process. Okay. So now after learning all these things, so you should also remember that what are the difference between battery and capacitor. Both are energy storage device, there is no doubt. And what is the difference? So now you can recall your Ragon plot in the very, very beginning slides. Battery higher energy density and capacitor high power density. On the right hand side bottom, you might have seen the Ragon plot. This is in the Ragon plot, left top you would have seen. And battery is the number of charge cycle limited, and here you have millions of charge discharge cycle possible here. Okay, all other similarities and differences are there. But in the case of capacitor, also you would see the application, the wider spectrum, starting from portable to even electric vehicle and large scale storage of electricity. How again, these are the applications where you could see the supercapacitor. See, the supercapacitor is a complementary device. So wherever battery and fuel cell works, these supercapacitors are essentially combined with these systems, because wherever you need quick power, so this capacitor would supplement the energy to those systems, battery or fuel cells. In the case of electric vehicle and all, now when you want to change the gear or when you want to climb the hill station, you need to have a high power. So that case, so these supercapacitor play a major role. Okay. So again, the materials, as far as material is concerned, supercapacitor also have its own, the history. So it was started with carbon, and slowly then people started working on metal oxide and polymer. Okay, so now in the recent trend in this supercapacitor is the combination of metal oxide and the polymer, or polymer and the carbon, and the combination of all these three components. Okay, let's try to understand one or two materials, then we will wind up. Look at this. So this kind of picture is called a hollow sphere. The idea is making a porous structure so that all your electrolyte component completely immersed in the active material, right? So that's why we started making different porous materials. So one of the manganese oxide, metal oxide, has ended up with this kind of morphology, right? Porous structure. So very importantly here, we use two different electrolytes, like 0.1 molar calcium nitrate and 0.1 molar sodium sulfate. But the beauty is here, when you use univalent electrolyte, that is sodium plus, and the capacitance is 188. This is a calcium bivalent electron here. Bivalent electron, the capacitance is 280 farads per gram. The reason behind that, see here, univalent means this is manganese oxide, right? So only one electron can force this manganese oxide, the transformation. But in the case of calcium, by having two electrons, so this could compel two manganese oxide, right? That's why you are getting high capacitance like this. The other system also here, the combination, as I mentioned, the material combination, the polymer alone, metal oxide alone, and the combination of these two things. This similar way here, P dot and V2O5, it's when they are alone, their activity is minimum. The moment they combine together, and you could see that there is an enhancement in the current, that means obviously higher capacitance, and you can see clearly here. Okay. And the last one, lithium ion supercapacitor. Now people are familiar with supercapacitor and lithium ion batteries. What is lithium ion supercapacitor? The idea is here, lithium ion we know high energy density, and supercapacitor we know high power density. So combining high energy and high power density, whether is it possible to have high energy and high power density devices. So that is called lithium ion supercapacitor. Okay. Look at this. This is the ECM image, that is scanning electron microscope image of the active material. Don't worry about that. And this is also, lithium ion supercapacitor. So here is the characterization of these compound independently. Look at these. The red one is a supercapacitor material. The blue one is your battery material, right? You could see the redox behavior, and there is no redox behavior. When you operate these two components independently, you could see that that is only 0.8 volt in the case of supercapacitor material. When you use battery material, it is only 0.6 volt. But the moment you combine these two together, you will end up with a higher voltage, that is 1.3 volt. When you have higher volt, you know that the energy density will be much higher. Especially in the case of supercapacitor, the energy density is being calculated by the formula of CV squared. So CV squared. So when you have a larger voltage, that is square. So energy density is much, much higher. Okay. So this is the way how we are fabricating the prototype devices, whether flow battery or capacitors. You can see here, this is a current collector, stainless steel electrode. So that is pre-treated with different emery sheets. The black one is the active material coated electrodes. So after coating this electrode, we kept for drying. And once it is drying, we know the mass of this active material. From there, we can calculate the capacitance. So this is the way how we are fabricating the cell stack of supercapacitor, right? Okay. So almost we are at the end. So what is that result? So by looking at the challenges and the energy demand that we need for our future application, the amount of energy that we are going to consume would be double or triple, right? So that could be, the projection is almost 30 terawatt. So do we have enough material to compensate this? Certainly no. So that's where we need to focus at different chemistries, materials compound, like bringing out a new technology with the combining physics, chemistry, and materials scientists together, so that we can achieve the energy demand that what we are projecting. So I will end the session by saying that there is a quote, the grass always looks greener on the other side, but alternative technology would be carefully examined for their long-term sustainability. The oil to lithium switch remains as the Woody Allen's words. More than any other time in history, mankind faces a crossroad, obviously. One path leads to despair and utter hopelessness. The other to a total extinction. Let us pray we have the wisdom to choose correctly. Thank you very much for your patience. And of course, I thank Director CSR Sikri, and my acknowledgements are due to DST and CSR for the funding. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Participants, if you have any queries, so kindly clarify your clarifications or doubts with your such person.
Hello, sir. This is Abhiram. Hello.
Sir,
Yes,
be
sir.
louder, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can ask your question.
Yes, sir. It was a very nice presentation, sir. It was very informative. Sir, my question, in one of the slides, you tried to say something about the energy storage. So what work is being done in that particular area, sir, regarding the energy storage?
Okay, so you are asking in energy storage, what is the system we are working?
I mean to say, sir, people are working on the batteries to a very large extent, but
Yes.
the battery will get discharged. Any other ways in which people are working on to store the energy, like say, for example, renewable sources? Battery is chemical
Yes, yes,
concept.
yes, yes.
Like renewably, what type of storage system is there for energy?
Yeah, you're right, sir. What you're asking essentially is that the renewable energy, solar and wind, how we are storing. See, the
Yes.
critical storage battery could be the conventional storage technology, what we have been talking, lithium to redox flow batteries. So these are chemical batteries. So solar and wind, these energies is stored through like a photovoltaic system. Okay, so that energy is converted to electrical energy. So that means this renewable solar is charging our battery. So charging means we are, storing the chemical energy. But when you need that energy, that chemical energy would be converted to electrical energy. So that is the simple concept. So essentially what happens, the solar and wind are used to charge our battery. Charging means what? We are storing that energy, solar and wind. So that chemical energy is being converted to electrical energy. Especially for renewable energy, this redox flow battery would be ideal system, because we have seen there is a possibility of decoupling energy and power. So it's easy to have larger scaling. That's why this renewable energy could be realized.
Sir, any work is going on with respect to thermal storage, sir?
Yeah, there are, but Sikri, I'm not sure, but there are significant amount of interest is being focused on the thermal energy storage also. But we have to see during the thermal process, what are the waste we are getting thermal that could be used as energy storage. So the cost and other things, what is the energy demand and what application we are using, these are things would be worked out. But certainly thermal energy storage system also is becoming one of the important system. Yes, thermal energy battery also is one. People are looking into that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes.
Participants, any more queries? Any more clarification?
Sir, is it audible?
Yeah, audible, sir. Yeah.
Sir, it's very really interesting, innovative talk, sir. So my question is, why dendrites affects electrodes? Is it possible to reduce the dendrites?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is possible to reduce the dendrite growth. This first part of your question could be realized. See, this dendrite growth is happening due to the uneven deposit of your metal particles. For example, you have a surface of lithium. So in contact with your organic electrolyte, what happens? This lithium ion is depositing on the surface of your metal. So that deposition will not happen at a uniform, at a smooth manner. So that's why there is a non-uniform growth, always growing one direction, right? One direction keeps increasing. So that gives you a kind of fiber that is called dendrite growth. There are additives are being used to suppress the dendrite growth, but 100% elimination of dendrite growth is not possible. To large extent, you can minimize that by adding a certain amount of additives in the electrolyte. But at the same time, when you add the additive, the performance of the actual electrolytes would have not been lost. So that part also we have to take care. So you need to have an optimum amount of additive, so that will not suppress the other performance of your electrolyte and the other compartment. Only it has to partially to reduce the dendrite growth. So that's possible. People are working in that direction also. If you are successful in completely preventing the dendrite growth, it's wonderful. Okay, so it's always welcome. Yeah, people are working on that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes,
Sir, one
yes,
more
sir.
question.
Yes.
What are the factors affect the charge discharge cycle, sir? Is any general factors are there to affect
Yeah.
cycling behavior?
Yeah, we are handling a separate course on that. The factors that influence the battery performance. Okay, so there are various factors. So one, mainly the rate of charge discharge. Okay, suppose you are charging your battery like 5 hours, then you can store large amount. but we don't want that. We want a quick charge. So 100% storage you can't expect. It will be like, 80% of your active material could be stored. So this is one example. And there are many other, thermal runaway. So during charge discharge, these are the parasitic reactions happen inside the batteries. And then the amount of the electrolyte, so that could be optimized, but still there is a way of the leakage. So that's why people are working the solid state battery. In the sense they are trying to completely remove the liquid electrolyte. Okay. And there are many factors really influence the voltage, current, and efficiency. All these things influence the battery performance, especially charging and discharging process. Yes, sir.
Participants, any more queries?
What are the recent methods are used in super?
Sorry, sir, your voice is breaking, sir.
Sir, what are the cathode or anode material recently used in supercap applications?
Yeah, the recent materials, the nitrides, carbides, and the combination of these compounds. So if you look at metal oxide and the conducting polymers, when they are alone, the capacitance less. So only by combining these two, that means, so we are trying to understand the synergic effect between these two components. So recently people are using organic based combination, like, organic compounds combined with your metal oxides and some kind of nitrides, carbides. So these are the compounds are being fabricated as a capacitor material. But actually the metal oxide, ruthenium oxide, like 720 farads per gram. But the ruthenium again is issue, the cost and the environmental problem, like your cobalt. So that's why we are going for other metals, manganese oxide, nickel oxide, iron oxide, and kind of thing. But as you said, the energy or the capacitance is limited. So you need to have an alternative active material. But whatever material we are having, it should have a variable oxidation states combined with whether it could be a metal oxide or whether it could be organic compounds or even combination of these two. Even polymer also could be realized. So people have started working graphene based compound. Graphene could be combined with metal oxide, kind of thing. There are a lot of materials recently are being exposed, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes.
I have a question. I have to extend the battery life. So, what is the major concern we have to factor we have to consider for exceeding the battery life?
Extending battery lives, actually the after assembling, before assembling the battery itself, people would have put a lot of effort to give you, the extended lifetime. But after getting that, the performance of the battery depends on the usage, to what extent we are using, and then in what mode you are charging and discharging. I would strongly recommend that now even people I have seen, they are using their mobile phone upon charging. That we never do that. Okay. So, and then try to completely make use of only 20%, till 20% you use, and then you charge it. Don't charge it when your mobile phone so 70% is there. Okay, so these are the balanced way that you can enhance your battery performance. And also you charge at a constant current mode. So there are many ways to recharge the batteries. One, voltage and current, and the other system, like, if it is a bulk, then solar and wind. So we forget about that. Only thing, you charge your mobile phone at a constant current rate. Of course, all these things are inbuilt, so you don't have to do anything to extend your battery. Only thing, you try to make use of at the right time or for right application. Then your lifetime of battery could be extended.
Participants, any more queries or any more clarification? So I hope there is no further
Hello,
queries. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, please.
hello.
Yes, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, I have a question that just now you mentioned that to enhance the life of the battery, we have to charge the battery in proper time and discharge the battery. Means we have to take care of the charging and discharging. So, is there any effect of the charging technique on lifespan of the battery?
Yeah, actually, see, these batteries will be out to the market after analyzing all these parameters. So like, how to discharge and the discharge profile and charging profile and efficiency and capacity loss and number of cycles, all these things have been already tested. Okay, so after that only it is being sent to the, market where they are fabricating with the mobile phone. Okay, so only thing you want to have, like charging and discharging at a right time and the right mode. So that's what we need to do to extend our mobile phone. But any battery system, it has its intrinsic nature. Okay, so that cannot be changed, because lithium cobalt said the capacity 130 means it's 130 only. You can't expect 170. Okay, theoretically it's 170 possible, but there is another chemical issue that we have not discussed in this lecture, by assuming that it's a common audience. So that's why.
Sir, in case of when we charge our laptop,
Yes.
so can we
Yeah,
charge laptop
yeah. The
100%?
other point I would like to tell you is here, whenever we are using our laptop, don't put it in always in the charged mode. Okay, you charge for 100% and then you stop, you remove your plug, and then try to use your laptop with the battery energy till it comes to 30% or 20%. Then again you switch on the charger. But I see people often they are always keeping in the charged mode. So they're by doing so, your lifetime of battery, it's minimized. The lifetime of battery will come down. So don't do that. That means what we are saying is number of cycles, charge discharge cycles. 100% you charge it and use it 20%. That means one cycle. So again charge it. So suppose if you keep it there always, then it's in the charge mode only. So you are consuming your energy from the electricity what you are getting, not from your battery. So thereby your battery is being ideal. So it's not being used. So then the lifetime of the battery goes down.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Any more clarification, audience? Participants?
I hope I convinced what are the importance of
Yeah.
this electromagnetic storage system.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so that is very important. There are a lot of other systems that we have not discussed, because it's difficult to, it's hard to understand the reaction mechanism, what's happening in and around in the battery chemistry. So only being a common man, these are the things essential to know. What is energy density, power density, what are the rechargeable battery system, lithium, lithium ion, lithium air, lithium sulfur, sodium ion batteries, redox flow battery, supercapacitor, some kind of, these are the fundamental things that we should know. And also we should encourage our young generation to pursue their research in this direction. So this has a lot of scope in the future.
So I hope there is no further queries. So gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of others. In this grateful occasion, on behalf of management of KPR Institute of Engineering and Technology, organizing team, and my own behalf, I express my sincere gratitude to our today's resource person, Raghupati sir, who has shared his wide experience related to a battery technology, electrochemical reaction in a battery, lithium-ion batteries, lithium-ion supercapacitors, and he has made a session in an interactive manner. So really, thank you, sir. Thank you for your support. So on behalf of all the participants and my own behalf, I express my sincere gratitude to him. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I thank all the participants for your active participation. So in this juncture, I would like to thank all the resource persons who had shared their wide experience in the 5 days of a 14 sessions, starting from Kribakaran sir to Rajkumar sir, Vivekanandan sir, Karthikeyan sir, Mardubandi sir, Saravanan sir, Prakash sir, Kumaravel sir, Mogana Sundaram sir, Gunasegaran sir, Josephine ma'am, Ravindran sir, Hemavati ma'am, and Raghupati sir. So they have shared their wide experience, even with their busy schedule. They have accepted our invitation. So really thankful to all. So on behalf of organizing team and head of the department, I thank the director, Atal Academics AICT New Delhi, who has provided this opportunity to conduct this Atal FDP and to make this Atal FDP in a successful manner. So finally, I thank all the participants for the actively participated and make this session in a great manner. So without participants, none of the event had made in a good manner. So I thank all the participants, and I thank the management of KPR Institute of Engineering and Technology, Principal Ma'am CE Sir, who has supported to conduct this event in a grateful and successful manner. So thank you one and all. Happy learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, you can wind up.